Hi everybody, Leonard here again. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you may be watching this. Here today to bring you again Horimiya episode 3, a review. So the live reaction went up on the channel not too long ago, and a lot of emotions in this episode. Things I wanted to see, things I was a little confused by, and things just had me like wanting to pull out whatever little hair that I had in my head. Really good episode. I think my favorite certainly of the series, granted only 3 episodes. But 4 parts in particular that I did want to discuss as it relates to this particular episode. First one we're going to talk about is Miyamoto's backstory. Now, when the episode had began, you can tell right away we're going to like a flashback. And based on last episode where we had that long, I described it as ominous scene with Miyamoto kind of looking out, my general assumption is that we were going to get some backstory. And backstory is what we got. We get a better understanding as to exactly why is it that Miyamoto acts the way that he does? He has the piercing. Why is he so aloof and absent from everybody? Why is he distant? What we see is because of the fact that his classmates always pegged him as weird. They thought he was weird, they didn't want to be around him, and for the most part they all stayed away from him. So much so they even made jokes at the fact that, oh, who's going to talk to him? Who's going to talk to him? I don't want to talk to him. So that was some of the stuff that Miyamoto had to deal with when he was growing up. And it kind of leads to some of the behavior that we see from him. Even getting a call back to that scene where he told Hori the fact that he had pierced his ear using the paperclip. So that was something else. And that kind of leads directly into, you can call it part 1B or you can call it part 2, the first friend that Miyamoto has. Now, Hori is the first person he has a relationship with. And yes, I know they're friends and we can all see there's going to be something more. But I'll preface it as saying the first guy friend, the first true, brotherly relationship almost. And that's Toru. We see here that Miyamoto looks at the entire group. He's with them after they get their assignments for which class they'll be in. And he thinks that he doesn't belong with Yuki and Hori and Toru. He's like, am I really part of this group? And when you think about it, I get it because Miyamoto comes off as a little bit down to himself. Again, he says it weird. Everyone else has very bubbly personalities. They enjoy things. They do a lot of stuff. They were a group before he was ever there. So he starts to wonder, am I really part of this? Sure enough, we know that, again, this is largely due to his backstory. And it's just the natural seeds of doubt that are planted inside of Miyamoto. Everyone brings their desk towards him. They're all hanging out. They're doing stuff. They're going through a report together. Toru even goes so far as to look for Miyamoto to give him some updates on different stuff happening when he's like, I haven't really seen you around. So it was really good stuff throughout the episode. Again, very good intel into how they feel about Miyamoto. And he ends up going the direct route. He asks them, what do you guys even see in me? Why do you guys like me? Do you like me? And it's funny because Toru starts to highlight every little thing that annoys him about Miyamoto. And it was funny because at the end of the day, Miyamoto is just hearing all this, but Toru brings out the fact that essentially he's you're not weird. And I have the quote here specifically. He ends up highlighting, you're weird, but that's okay. In Japanese, he was like, Hendakuro kirajinai. So he's just saying you're not a weird individual. There's nothing wrong with you. He just says that you're just awkward. And I guess to me, this was a big turning point for, I think, Miyamoto's character. And you see it there, he kind of starts to, he puts his hands in his face, and you can't see it, but you can make the assumption perhaps that he was crying or overwhelmed with emotion. And he even says, if only the me of 10 years ago heard these words. It goes to show you that Toru has truly been the friend that Miyamoto is looking for. And it's not just Toru, by the way. They had the moment, but really, Yuki, someone that we see later on in the episode, he clearly trusts now as well. And obviously, of course, Hori, he cares so much about her. So it's just happy to see, again, these 2 portions, Miyamoto becoming more developed as a character. We get explanations as to why he is the way that he is. Now to the other parts. Remy, I'll call this part 3, which is Remy. Hori goes to school early during the day because of the fact that Sota is starting school earlier and then he also gets home later. She finds herself in school much earlier probably because she has to help him get ready. Remy, if you recall, Remy is the girlfriend of, I forgot his name for a second, Sengoku. So that's his girlfriend, and obviously we had all this stuff, the student council from last week's episode and the drama there. So she sits down and apparently she looks at Hori asking her personal stuff about Miyamoto, like, are they just friends? Like, what's happening there? And it gets crazy because she says basically like, oh, fine, I can have Miyamoto. And I'm like, no, whoa, major problem. I remember watching the episode thinking to myself, like, you can't just claim him, like, he's a person, you can't claim him, and this is just completely, I think I said, like, out of pocket. So it was just wrong. And you can see that showing parallels to episode 1, where this thing with Yuki happened, where Yuki saw Miyamura, and Miyamura highlighted to Hori, like, hey, your friend saw me the way that I was, like my normal self. Hori I'll use the word insecure. I do think that's it. Hori was insecure in that situation because she's developing a relationship with Miyamoto and she has feelings that either she hasn't fully recognized or kind of knows it's there and she's still discovering them. She didn't like the idea that Yuki could potentially be in on this secret, this relationship that's caused the bond between her and Miyamoto. She doesn't want anyone infringing on that relationship. Same thing applies here with Remy. When Remy comes in and says that he's going to be hers, all of a sudden Hori, and I was yelling at the camera just like, Hori, don't let her do this, because in many times in a lot of shoujo, anime in general, manga, that situation the female lead will back off and they know it's not okay, but they don't want to cause a disturbance. Hori, being the excellent, best character that she is like, no, you can't have him. She literally is just like, I cannot let you have him. And she says, quote, I have it written down here, that Miyamoto is mine, you can't have him, I'll never let you have him. And it just reminded me so much of another anime I love so much, a novel, Toradora, where you have Aisaka Taiga, who basically is like the main female lead, and she basically tells everyone that they can't have Ryuji, the main guy, because of the fact that he's hers. We didn't know it at the time, we can make assumptions, but she was still discovering her feelings and recognizing that Ryuji was clearly very important to her. So, sorry, if you haven't seen Toradora, I recommend it. Now's a good time. I think got released on Netflix this year, so a lot of people are rewatching it again. Highly recommend. One of my favorites. But anyway, we get to the point where after this whole scene takes place, we're delving into now Hori's character. How does she feel about Miyamoto? And we see they start watching movies together, horror movies, and they bring a callback to their hands. We learn the fact that Hori is double jointed apparently, and this leads to an opportunity where we see Toru try to clasp her hand, or was about to, and she's just threatening him you better not. But in contrast to that with Miyamura, they put their hands together and they start making comments about oh, your hand is so much bigger than mine, your hand is soft, you don't have calluses. Hori clasped Miyamura's hand. And I was just like, wait, what? And then Miyamura ended up clasping Hori's hand. So at this point, I'm just like, what is happening here? And eventually when this happens, she ends up saying, I love you. And I was just like, what? I was like, completely blew my mind. And then she tries to walk it back saying that, well, no, she loves his hands, this and that. But Miyamura says he loves her hands too. And then she says it again. She's just like, I love you. And then afterwards, I think Miyamoto says it actually. Miyamoto says, I love you. And Hori is just like, yeah, I know. So it created this really warm, atmosphere. And you can tell that clearly they both like each other. They're discovering the feelings. And I was kind of thrown off. And this is actually one thing I don't necessarily like about the episode. It feels like they confirmed the feelings, but at the same time, they didn't really confirm it because it wasn't explicit. But you get the vibe that that's kind of what's happening there. And that kind of leads to the next part of the episode. We'll go part 4. I called the fight, which really got me kind of annoyed in some respects. I loved it, but I think from this perspective of Toru, I think he was fully in the right for everything that happened there. Because we see that Toru overheard Remy, again, the one who's dating the president of the student council, about how she was teasing Hori, but how Hori just completely lost it and was just like, oh, Miyamoto's mine. And Toru, because of the fact that he has feelings for obviously Hori, this hurts, but likewise, he's friends. He's legitimately friends with Miyamoto. So when he confronts Miyamoto about this, all of a sudden things are going to go kind of south because Miyamoto hasn't gotten to the point yet of accepting his feelings. Furthermore, Miyamoto can't really get past the fact, again, based on his backstory, that people can view him in a positive light. He's just getting to the point of accepting that he can have friends. That he's supposed to accept that this person who likes someone like him, it's difficult. That's my assumption anyway, it's difficult for him, and I feel that. Nonetheless, that dramatic music starts playing in the background, which I heard in episode 2 and I hear it again. It was like,
そう言ったらお前どうする心理戦だ
and I'm like, it's about to go down. I'm like, every time this music comes on, I'm just going to permanently feel anxiety because I know something's going to happen. And essentially there you have it to where Miyamoto, when the music starts playing, he's getting pressed by Toru, like, oh, Toru's like, you like her? Do you like her? Well, I don't know, I don't want to say that. But Toru essentially gets to the point where he's just like, what if I told you Hori likes you? And Miyamoto's like, well, that wouldn't happen. And he's just like, well, let's suppose it did happen. Would you just brush it off the same way you just did now? So this slowly starts to irk Miyamoto. He's just kind of in the mindset where I don't think he understands yet fully his feelings. But as a result, when he starts getting pressed by Toru, you can see he's getting angrier, and then they unintentionally kind of start butting heads. Toru hits Miyamoto. It wasn't that bad, but he hit him by accident. He apologized, and Miyamoto went full on assault mode. He beat up Toru to know that it was just bad. It was bad to the point where the next day when they see Toru come in, initially Hori was mad at Toru for being a Miyamoto. You see Toru's in completely war shape. He's just completely messed up because Miyamoto went off on him. So I thought that was interesting. And the episode kind of highlights at the end the fact that Miyamoto confides in Yuki, their other friend, that the fight was about Hori. So Yuki's now putting two and two together and she realizes, oh, interesting. And she's not going to say anything, but she kind of smiles to herself because she understands the situation at hand. And the episode leads off again with another, you can call it a cliffhanger, Toru pretty much waiting outside and Miyamoto approaching him after Hori highlighted that they should try to make up with each other. I don't think they're mad at each other necessarily, but there's a lot of feelings and emotions going on. And again, because Toru and Miyamoto are officially like they're friends and they care about each other, it makes this conversation a little more difficult because I assume Toru is going to try and push Miyamoto to understand Hori's feelings, even though this will hurt Toru because he likes Hori. So it's really interesting again. I think Toru is now like one of my favorite characters because it's very identifiable. He's a good guy. He cares about her, but he cares more about her from the standpoint of her being happy and the happiness of her friend than it is about him eventually getting the person that he likes. To me, that's a very selfless thing to do. It's good, and I definitely appreciate that about his character. So, good stuff from Toru. So, that's all I have in terms of this review. I'm looking forward to see exactly what's going to happen in the next episode, what the developments are going to be with Toru and Miyamoto. Because as I said before again, I think Miyamoto has to kind of get out of this sense of he's not worthy. And we've seen this for multiple episodes now. This whole idea that Miyamoto is not worthy of individuals getting played out. And based on the backstory, I get it. But the reason why I find it very frustrating is the fact that he needs to just slowly recognize these people care about him and he's allowed to be happy. And that's why I always say that Miyamoto is a character that I think has potential to be the best character in this whole story because the complexities around him. Even though Hori's still like my favorite character, Miyamoto has a lot going on. So I hope he gets happy. I hope the two of them end up together. I'm sure they will based on everything that's happening. And I think at some point in the story they will. This doesn't give me the vibes of like, oh, I like you, but I don't like you. And they're going to be back and forth. Everything's happening very direct in the show, which is refreshing. Very direct development. The fact that they even said I love you to each other and that's been acknowledged to some degree tells me at some point they're going to end up in a relationship in the show. Question is just a question of now, how does it happen? And do they weather the storm of all the other issues that may take place as a result? Because again, Hori has her own things, but Miyamoto as a character, I sense has a lot of deep issues that he's trying to work himself through. That's just my sense anyway as an anime only. So, looking forward to the next episode. This is Leonard again. I hope everybody, you have a great day. Take care.